Good morning, good afternoon, good night. This is another episode in our reading of Hegel's Encyclopedia. We're reading the third part of the Encyclopedia, the philosophy of spirit, and we are looking at the paragraphs on social morality. So we're going to read the first paragraph of social morality today, and then our next installments will also be about social morality. So let's dive into it. On the left you see the Soerkamp edition of the Encyclopedia, and on the right the translation, paragraph 513. Die Sittlichkeit, social morality, is the full achievement, the completion of objective spirit. Perfection might be a bit too strong. Die Wahrheit des subjektiven und objektiven Geistes selbst. So it's the truth, that is to say, it is where the opposition, the contradiction between subjective and objective spirit is fully revealed as a unity. The truth of the subjective and objective spirit itself. So the truth of it means the inner source or ground from which subjective and objective spirit arise themselves in their relative opposition. Die Einseitigkeit von diesem ist, so the one-sidedness von diesem. Now we have to determine what is meant by von diesem, from this. Which one-sidedness are we talking about? We should be talking about the one-sidedness of the subjective spirit and the objective spirit. Each of them is one-sided. But maybe diesem und jenem, he is referring to one of these. And I think he is referring to the latter. He's referring first of all to the objective spirit, because later on he is going to speak about the Einseitigkeit des subjektiven Geistes. So first the Einseitigkeit von objektiven Geiste. Now what is the one-sidedness? Here the failure of the latter, so the translation has reached the same conclusion. Die Einseitigkeit von diesem ist. Now, the objective spirit also has two elements. Teils seine Freiheit unmittelbar in der Realität, daher im Äußeren, der Sache. That's the one side of objective spirit. It's freedom. Freedom that realizes itself, but immediately, in its immediate form, so without being reflected into itself, without reflection. So simply as what it is and the way it works. Where is this freedom objective? Where can it be seen and found, and where is it active? Well, it's within reality, within the external, that is to say within the Sache, that something else is thing. Sache is not thing. Sache is the state of affairs. It's reality as it can be approached as a conglomeration of things. The state is like the Sache, but the state is not a thing. So immediately this freedom is engaged in reality, is absorbed by the external, is active within a Sache. That's the one side of it. So objective spirit has a relative contradiction within itself also. Teils seine Freiheit unmittelbar in der Realität, daher im Äußeren der Sache, teils in dem Guten, als einem abstrakt Allgemeinen zu haben. So, freedom is also, that is what we saw within the sphere of morality, it is aiming for, it is aimed at a purpose, it has a purpose within itself, and that is to do the good. But the good is not something very concrete. The good is different for each of us. The good is abstract, even though it's universal. Each of us has a good that we are purposing, that we are purposefully striving for. So that is, before the semicolon, the one-sidedness and the inner contradiction within objective spirit, immediate freedom, and the good, immediate freedom absorbed in reality, within reality, and the good is something that we have as a purpose. Then next, the one-sidedness of the former. Die Einseitigkeit des subjektiven Geistes ist gleichfalls abstrakt gegen das Allgemeine. So subjective spirit is in contradiction with the universality within objective spirit, and that universality is just abstract. So why not? It can maintain that contradiction. Gleichfalls abstrakt gegen das Allgemeine, in seiner innerlichen Einzelheit selbstbestimmend zu sein. So that is the main thing of subjective spirit. It's also freedom, but it's freedom that withdraws from the universality of the good, and that merely means something like, I determine what I am, I determine myself. And that is in opposition to and in distinction to the universal good. I determine what I am. I may determine not to be good or not to strive for the good. Now, if these one-sidednesses are lifted, diese Einseitigkeiten aufgehoben, that means that subjective freedom is no longer in contradiction to the universal, and it means that the reality that objective spirit strives for is something that subjective freedom can recognize as its own. So the reality that objective spirit gives itself, this being absorbed by reality, this being active within the Sache, that is something that subjective freedom now recognizes as itself. It is me that is active and striving for the good, that is acting along the lines of social morality. That is a main theme in Hegel's social philosophy. How can my individual freedom recognize itself in the general order of moral life within which I live? So we are going to talk about the rules of social morality within the family and civil society and my relationship to the state, etc. Everything is aiming for this recognition. I recognize myself within what at the same time is different from me, is something other than me, but I recognize myself in it. I can identify with it, so to speak. Diese Einseitigkeiten aufgehoben, so ist die subjektive Freiheit als der an und für sich allgemeine vernünftige Wille. So subjective freedom becomes universal and rational will, der in dem Bewusstsein der einzelnen Subjektivität sein Wissen von sich. So this universal will only has subjectivity, only has consciousness of itself within the individual. So I recognize myself in the universal rational order of things in which I live, but at the same time this rational objective order in which I live is only really present consciously within myself. So it's grounded in the consciousness of all these finite individual subjects, and at the same time these finite individual subjects have their meaning and their moral life only within this general order. That's a dialectical relationship between the universal in which I live and from which I am distinct as an individual. And then we say both things. We say, I recognize this general, this universal order in which I live, but at the same time we can say this general order only exists in as far as I recognize it. So, on the one hand, we can have a universal moral order in which I cannot recognize myself, and then I'm not free. Or, if free subjects do not recognize this general order falls apart or becomes autocratic and dictatorial. In both cases, freedom is lost, and the general moral order falls apart. So there has to be this balance between recognition on the one hand and the rationality of the universal will. If it's rational, if we have the rational state, it will not oppress freedom because it knows that the freedoms of individual subjects actually drive and ground this universal rational will. So if someone is a leader in the state, or if we have a political elite that reasons differently, that does not see itself as grounded within the collective will of individual subjects, it becomes authoritarian and it's no longer the universal will, and it becomes self-destructive and is no longer the rational will. Der in dem Bewusstsein der einzelnen Subjektivität sein Wissen von sich und die Gesinnung wie seine Betätigung unmittelbare allgemeine Wirklichkeit zugleich als Sitte hat. And that's very important. How is this unity between subjective freedom on the one hand and this general universal order at first present and active as Sitte? Sitte means something like the way we are used to doing things, the way we are used to speak about ourselves, the way we are used to exercise our freedom. As he calls it here at the end, it's self-conscious freedom that has become like nature. It's culture, but it's like nature. It's self-evident. It seems to consist of general laws that I obey without even thinking about it. It's what I've been taught by my parents. It's how I've been raised within the culture. It's all these self-evident principles and rules of behavior that form my Sitte. So the translation speaks about moral usage, manner and custom. And then here where self-conscious liberty has become nature. Liberty has become nature, freedom has become nature. Liberty and freedom can be distinguished, by the way. I would call freedom at the level of social morality liberty, because it's connected also with political rights. And liberty, I think, is a political or social right. Freedom is more of an anthropological term with which we describe our ability to choose, our ability to determine ourselves. Hegel uses the word vrijheid in all these cases, so but in English we can have this wonderful distinction between liberty and freedom. Okay, that's it for now. This is just a 15-minute broadcast about paragraph 513, and next time we will talk about paragraph 514. Thanks for listening. Wish you well in your studies. Be wise. And we'll see each other next time.